Shipping and logistics. This is often another area that exporters can find tricky to navigate, especially in the early stages of setting up a route to market in the UAE. It's really important to start with that you understand who is responsible for the shipping, and that is usually as part of what's negotiated with your commercial terms. So if you're working off an ex-works or an FCA or even an FOB type shipment, then usually the aspect of the transportation onwards and coming into the UAE would be the responsibility of your buyer. And that can make things a little bit easier for the first time exporters, although it does not negate the fact that you still will need to process the necessary export documentation for that consignment in order for your buyer to be able to clear the goods and take responsibility of it at their end. With the transport side of things, there's a number of considerations, and obviously timeframes and how long it will take to get your goods into the UAE from the point of departure is always a factor, particularly with products within the food and drink sector, which are perishable, and shelf life is always critical, particularly when in the UAE there usually needs to be a high percentage remaining shelf life of products when they enter the UAE in order to be able to have a necessary sell-through rate and not be left with an issue of having to liquidate stock because it's expiring. This is always critical to manage, and we do see some UAE importers preferring as a result to air freight goods into the UAE market despite their much higher costs of doing so, particularly also with first initial shipments to get the products in. So it is worth bearing in mind who is responsible for the shipment and deciding whether you as a brand owner are capable and able through your own networks, maybe of using freight forwarders in the past or having a good relationship with other logistics companies, that you're ready and able to take on some of that responsibility. Or if you aren't, making sure that the importer does have the necessary networks at their end to ensure that the products can arrive safely and timely in order to make sure that the products will do well when they arrive and are sold through at the right rate of sale and give a great performance for ongoing business and growing that business together. Another way that smaller brands may be able to operate in the marketplace is to work through consolidators who are supplying into, say, the retail channels, usually on a consignment basis where it's much smaller, but it's usually a domestic sale. You deliver your goods down to their consolidation point, and then they will do all the rest onwards, including the documentation and some of the Arabic labeling, which often other brand owners may have to take on responsibility if they're dealing elsewhere with other distribution partners or selling direct to retail sometimes too. Another consideration for your products and to bear in mind for transportation is the extremely high temperatures in the UAE and the wider Gulf region that are encountered particularly during the summer months, and making sure that your product, whilst it may be ambient and be able to not be subject to any temperature control in your domestic market, that may not be the case either when in transportation or when in storage in the UAE, for example. So be mindful of that and what that may then imply in terms of transportation needing to be temperature controlled, and then an extra cost factor and a little bit more complexity to manage as well should be taken into consideration when looking at your logistics and transportation options. As always, it's really important to make sure you find the right logistics partners and networks to work with. Great ones can help and also support you with documentation and understanding some of that needs to accompany the shipments as well. But ultimately, it's down to you to decide who will take responsibility for the transportation and the storage and onward shipment of the products. I fully appreciate that within this section, there's a lot to take on board when it comes to transportation and logistics. However, in our opinion and from our expertise and experience, if you're a first-time exporter or new to this, it's preferable to try and take as much responsibility away from yourselves and onto the buyer as you possibly can in order to make sure that the transition of getting your goods into the UAE is as smooth and as positive an experience as possible. In which case, we would suggest that when it comes to your Incoterms, trying to negotiate on FCA or FOB terms would be preferable to take and ease some of that complexity from you. I hope you found that useful.